The last city on Altair Prime burned like a dying star against the purple twilight. Admiral Vexith stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the flames dance across the planet's surface far below. His 4 eyes tracked the destruction with cold satisfaction. Another world conquered, another species absorbed into the hegemony's endless hunger. The Altarians had been proud once. They called themselves the Collective, masters of energy manipulation and quantum physics. Their cities floated in the sky, held aloft by gravity wells they could bend like clay. Their weapons could tear holes in space itself. They thought themselves advanced. They thought themselves safe. They had been wrong. Fleet Commander, his aide approached with respectful caution. The young Zephyrian's bio-armor pulsed with nervous green light. The absorption process is complete. All Altarian technology has been integrated into our ships. Vexith nodded slowly. His own armor, black and silver like liquid metal, shifted and flowed around his tall frame. How long did it take this time? 17 standard hours, sir. Less than the Corvin Syndicate, but longer than the Mesh Confederacy. The Altarians were stubborn, Vexith mused, watching a floating city crash into the ocean in a splash of fire and steam. They kept trying new weapons even when they saw them fail. Admirable in a way. The bridge of the evolutionary apex hummed with organic life. The walls breathed slowly, filtering air and processing information. Nerve clusters glowed softly as they transmitted data throughout the ship. The hegemony didn't build their vessels so much as grow them, crafting each one to be a perfect fusion of biology and technology. It was this fusion that made them unstoppable. When an enemy fired energy weapons, their ships grew new organs to absorb the energy. When projectiles struck their hulls, the bio-armor learned to deflect them. Each attack made them stronger. Each battle taught them how to win the next one. Vexith had commanded fleets for 300 years. In that time, he had conquered 47 star systems and absorbed the knowledge of 23 different species. Not once had he faced an enemy that could adapt faster than his ships could learn. Sir, another aide reported, Intelligence Division has completed their analysis of the next sector. A holographic display materialized in the air before Vexith. Star charts and data streams painted a picture of a small spiral galaxy, unremarkable and isolated. Red dots marked inhabited systems. There weren't many. The Sol Cluster, the aide continued. Inhabited by a species called humans. Single galaxy, limited faster-than-light capability, primitive technology base. Vexith studied the data with growing interest. The humans had only discovered interstellar travel 50 years ago. Their weapons were based on crude chemical explosives and simple energy projection. Their ships were metal and plastic, built in factories instead of grown in birthing pools. Estimated conquest time? He asked. 6 months, sir. Possibly less. They show no signs of advanced adaptive technology or exotic weapons systems. Interesting. Vexith zoomed in on the 3rd planet of their home system. A blue and green world, covered in water and primitive landmasses. What makes them worth absorbing? They're persistent, sir. Our deep scouts report that humans don't retreat easily. When their colonies are attacked, they fight to the last individual. They've also shown remarkable creativity in their limited military engagements with each other. Stubbornness and creativity. Vexith's mouth curved in what might have been a smile. Those can be useful traits, properly directed. He turned away from the burning planet below. The Altarians were finished. Their knowledge would live on in hegemony bioships. Their technology would be improved and integrated. Their worlds would be reshaped to serve the greater good. It was always this way. The strong absorbed the weak, and the hegemony was the strongest force in known space. Prepare the fleet for transit, Vexith commanded. Set course for the Sol Cluster. Yes, sir. What force composition do you require? Vexith considered this. The humans were primitive, but overconfidence had destroyed greater civilizations. Standard pacification fleet, 200 primary vessels, support craft, and the full bioadaptation array. We'll start with their outer colonies and work inward, giving our ships time to learn their capabilities. As his orders spread throughout the fleet, Vexith felt a familiar thrill. A new species to study, new technologies to absorb, new ways of thinking to integrate into the hegemony's vast library of knowledge. The bioships began to move, their organic, hulls rippling as they prepared for the journey between stars. Each vessel was unique, evolved for specific purposes, but capable of rapid adaptation. Some were built for raw firepower, others for speed and stealth. The largest could berth new ships mid-battle, growing reinforcements from absorbed enemy materials. Vexith's flagship was among the most advanced. The evolutionary apex had survived battles that would have destroyed lesser vessels, learning from each encounter. Its bio-armor could shift between energy absorption and kinetic deflection. Its weapons could reconfigure themselves to exploit any weakness. Its neural networks held the combat memories of 100 conquered species. Transit in 1 hour, his navigation officer reported. All ships report ready for jump. Vexith nodded and settled into his command throne. The organic chair molded itself to his body, connecting neural interfaces to his armor's systems. Through the ship's senses, he could feel the fleet around him. 200 hearts beating as one, ready to carry the hegemony's dominion to another corner of the universe. He thought about the humans as the countdown proceeded. Primitive, yes, but every species had something to offer. The Corvin had contributed their mastery of gravity manipulation. The Mesh had provided advanced computational systems. The Altarians had given them quantum energy projection. What would the humans provide? Their data suggested a species that fought with crude but effective weapons, chemical explosives, kinetic projectiles, simple energy beams. Nothing that would challenge his ship's adaptive capabilities, but perhaps their stubbornness would prove interesting. 30 seconds to transit. The bridge darkened as the ship's biological systems redirected power to the jump drives. Around them, space began to twist and fold. The hegemony's faster-than-light technology was another absorbed innovation, taken from a long-dead species whose name had been forgotten centuries ago. 10 seconds. Vexith closed his eyes and felt the familiar sensation of reality bending around them. For a moment that lasted forever, they existed between spaces, traveling through dimensions that had no names. Then they emerged into normal space, and a new galaxy spread out before them. Jump complete, his navigator announced. All ships accounted for. We are at the edge of human space. Through the ship's sensors, Vexith examined their destination. The stars were younger here, burning brighter. Several systems showed signs of human habitation. Simple radio signals, primitive energy signatures, the electromagnetic noise of an industrializing civilization. Begin standard approach, he commanded. Target their outermost colonies first. I want our ships to learn their capabilities before we reach their core worlds. As the fleet moved deeper into human space, Vexith felt the satisfaction of another campaign beginning. In 6 months, perhaps less, this galaxy would belong to the hegemony. The humans would be absorbed, their knowledge integrated, their resistance overcome. It had always been this way, it would always be this way. The hegemony was evolution itself, and evolution was unstoppable. Admiral Sarah Chen stared at the debris field where New Geneva used to be. Twisted metal floated in the void, still glowing from whatever had destroyed the colony. 3 million people had lived on that world just 48 hours ago. Now there was nothing but wreckage and silence. Any survivors? She asked quietly. Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez shook his head. None, Admiral. Whatever hit them was thorough. We're not even picking up escape pod signals. Chen felt a cold weight settle in her stomach. She had commanded the Terran defense force for 15 years through 3 colonial wars and countless pirate raids. She had never seen destruction this complete. What about the other sites? Same story everywhere. Kepler 442b, Ross 128, Wolf 359. All our outer colonies gone. The attack pattern suggests they're working their way inward toward Earth. Chen walked to the main display screen. The holographic star map showed human space as she had known it for decades. 37 colony worlds, connected by shipping lanes and communication networks. Now red X marks covered the outer rim, where 7 worlds had simply vanished. Show me the wreckage analysis again. Dr. Elena Vasquez, the fleet's chief science officer, brought up her data on the main screen. This is unlike anything in our databases. Admiral, the debris appears to be partially organic. Look at these microscopic images. Chen studied the strange material. It looked like metal, but it seemed to pulse with faint life. Veins ran through it like blood vessels. Some pieces appeared to be healing themselves even as they watched. It's alive? Chen asked. Was alive, Vasquez corrected. The larger pieces show signs of a complex nervous system. Whatever destroyed our colonies, their ships are grown, not built. That's impossible. So was faster-than-light travel, until we figured it out. Vasquez zoomed in on another sample. Admiral, this technology is centuries ahead of ours. Maybe thousands of years. Whoever did this, they're not using conventional weapons or ships. Chen felt the weight of command settling on her shoulders. In her 15 years as Admiral, she had always known what to do. Fight pirates with superior firepower. Negotiate with colony rebels. Protect shipping lanes with patrol fleets. But this was different. This was an enemy that could destroy entire worlds and leave nothing but living debris. Any word from Earth Command? They've activated Protocol Lazarus, Rodriguez reported. Full military mobilization. Every ship, every weapon, every resource. We have, Chen nodded grimly. Protocol Lazarus was the last resort designed for an extinction-level threat. She had helped write it herself, though she never thought it would be needed. Time to full mobilization? 6 weeks for the main fleet. 2 weeks for rapid response forces. Too long. Chen turned back to the debris field. If they keep moving, at this pace, they'll reach the core worlds before we're ready. Admiral, Vasquez said carefully, there might be another option. Chen looked at her science officer. Elena Vasquez was brilliant, but she was also cautious. For her to suggest something in that tone meant she was thinking dangerously outside the box. Go on. I've been studying the attack patterns. Whoever these enemies are, they seem to learn from each encounter. The wreckage from New Geneva shows different adaptations than the debris from Kepler 442b. They're evolving their tactics in real time. That makes them more dangerous, not less. Maybe. Or maybe it makes them predictable. Vasquez pulled up tactical displays from the destroyed colonies. They adapt to whatever resistance they encounter. They learn from success and failure. But what if we could control what they learn? Chen frowned. Explain. What if we deliberately taught them the wrong lessons? Show them weapons that work, then stop working? Make them adapt to threats that aren't real threats? Rodriguez looked skeptical. That would mean sacrificing ships and crews to feed them false information. It would mean buying time, Vasquez countered, and maybe finding a weakness. Before Chen could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. The bridge crew scrambled to their stations as tactical displays lit up with new contacts. Admiral, the sensor officer called out, we have incoming ships, unknown configuration, heading straight for us. Chen moved to the tactical station. The enemy vessels appeared on screen as they dropped out of faster-than-light travel. They were unlike anything she had ever seen. Organic curves instead of angular. Metal. Surfaces that seemed to shift and flow. No obvious weapons, but Chen could feel the menace radiating from them. How many? 12 ships, ranging from frigate to cruiser size. They're not responding to our hails. Red alert. All hands to battle stations. The UES Indomitable came alive around them. Chen's flagship was a powerful vessel armed with plasma cannons, kinetic railguns, and nuclear torpedoes. Against human enemies, it was nearly unstoppable. Against these alien ships, she had no idea what to expect. They're accelerating toward us, Rodriguez reported. No energy signatures we can identify. It's like they're powered by something we can't detect. Fire. A warning shot across their lead vessel. Aye, Admiral. Plasma cannon minimum yield. The bridge crew watched as a beam of superheated gas lanced out toward the alien ships. It struck the lead vessel directly in what might have been its bow section. For a moment, the alien ship seemed to glow where the plasma hit. Then it kept coming. Completely undamaged. Direct hit. No effect, the weapons officer reported. Target appears to have absorbed the plasma discharge. Chen felt her blood run cold. Absorbed it? That was impossible. Plasma cannons generated temperatures of millions of degrees. Nothing could simply absorb that kind of energy. Try kinetic rounds, firing railgun, tungsten penetrators. This time, solid projectiles moving at tremendous speed struck the alien vessel. Chen watched the impacts register on sensors, but again, no visible damage occurred. The ship's hull seemed to ripple where the rounds hit, then returned to its original shape. No effect, Admiral. The hull appears to be adapting to kinetic impact. Nuclear torpedoes, full spread. 6 nuclear warheads streaked toward the alien. Formation. Each one carried enough explosive power to level a city. The aliens made no attempt to evade or defend themselves. The weapons struck home in brilliant flashes of atomic fire. When the explosions cleared, all 12 alien ships were still there, still approaching. That's impossible, Rodriguez whispered. But Chen was beginning to understand. These ships weren't just defending against their attacks. They were learning from them. Each weapon that struck them made them stronger, more resistant. Dr. Vasquez, she said quietly, I think you might be right about teaching them the wrong lessons. Admiral, they're targeting us, the sensor officer announced. Unknown energy buildup in their forward sections. Evasive maneuvers. All ships, fall back to Rally Point Delta. The Indomitable turned and accelerated away from the alien fleet, but Chen knew it was too late. Whatever weapons those ships possessed, they had just learned everything they needed to know about human capabilities. Plasma, kinetics, nuclear weapons, all their secrets had been revealed in one short engagement. As they retreated, Chen watched the enemy ships on her tactical display. They weren't pursuing aggressively. They seemed content to let the humans run, almost as if they wanted survivors to report what had happened. "Set course for Earth," she ordered, "and send a priority message to Defense Command. Tell them we've made contact with the enemy. Tell them our conventional weapons are useless." And the enemy capabilities? Chen thought about the alien ships, shrugging off nuclear weapons like raindrops. "Tell them we're facing something that learns from everything we throw at it. Every attack makes them stronger." As the human fleet jumped away, leaving the aliens in control of the system, Chen began to understand the true scope of their problem. They weren't just fighting an advanced enemy. They were fighting an enemy that became more advanced with every battle. But Elena Vasquez was right about one thing. If these aliens learned from every encounter, then perhaps they could be taught. The question was whether humanity could afford the cost of the lessons. Captain Marcus Webb knew he was going to die. Everyone aboard the UES Thermopylae knew it. That was the point. "Enemy fleet detected," his tactical officer announced. 47 vessels approaching from Sector 7. Webb nodded calmly. According to the plan, his ship and the 12 others in his squadron were about to engage the alien hegemony fleet in what would appear to be a desperate last stand. They would fight bravely, showcase humanity's ultimate weapon, and then die. Gloriously, it was all carefully choreographed theater. "Bring us about," Webb ordered. "Signal the fleet. Time to show them our antimatter beams." 6 months had passed since Admiral Chen's first encounter with the aliens. 6 months of careful defeats, strategic retreats, and deliberate failures. Each engagement had been designed to teach the hegemony exactly what humanity wanted them to learn. The antimatter beam system was a perfect example. The weapons were real, devastatingly powerful, and completely useless against an adaptive enemy. But the aliens didn't know that yet. "Antimatter cannon charged and ready," his weapons officer reported. "Fire." A lance of pure annihilation energy struck the lead hegemony vessel. For a few seconds, the alien ship's bio-armor flared and buckled under the assault. The antimatter beam carved through their hull like a knife through paper. Then, just as the human scientists had predicted, the alien ship began to adapt. Its hull started absorbing the antimatter energy, converting it into something harmless. Within minutes, the devastating weapon became completely ineffective. "Direct hit, but they're adapting," the tactical officer reported, playing his role perfectly. "Antimatter effectiveness dropping rapidly." "Impossible," Webb said with theatrical despair. "That was our best weapon." Of course it wasn't. Humanity's best weapons were hidden away, waiting for the right moment. The antimatter beams were just another lesson in the curriculum they were teaching their enemies. In the secure command bunker buried beneath Luna, Admiral Chen watched the battle through encrypted data feeds. Around her, the real war was being planned by the finest military minds humanity had ever produced. "Thermopylae is performing perfectly," reported Colonel Harrison, the Deception Operation Commander. "The aliens are learning to counter antimatter weaponry exactly as predicted." "Casualties?" Chen asked. "Minimal so far. Captain Webb's crew knew what they were signing up for." Chen nodded, but the weight of command pressed heavily on her shoulders. Every ship they sacrificed, every life lost in these staged battles was a price paid for future victory. But the cost was becoming harder to bear. Dr. Vasquez approached with her latest analysis. "The alien adaptation patterns are holding steady. They're becoming immune to everything we show them, but only what we show them. And our real weapons? Still completely unknown to them. We've successfully kept kinetic weapons, chemical explosives, and biological agents out of every engagement. As far as they know, humans only fight with energy weapons and exotic physics. How much longer can we keep this up?" "Not much longer," Vasquez admitted. "They're getting suspicious. Admiral Vexith has started questioning why human weapons are so similar across different colonies." Chen turned back to the tactical display. The Thermopylae was taking heavy damage now, her antimatter beams completely ineffective against the adapted alien hulls. Soon, Captain Webb and his crew would make their final sacrifice for the greater deception. "Phase 2, she ordered. "Signal the Leonidas Squadron." Across the galaxy, Captain Sarah Martinez received the coded transmission. Her ship, the UES Leonidas, was equipped with humanity's second ultimate weapon, gravitational pulse cannons that could theoretically crack a planet in half. They were also completely fake. The gravitational pulse generators were real enough to fool sensors, but they were designed to fail after initial success. Another lesson for the aliens to learn, another adaptation for them to waste resources developing. "Enemy fleet approaching Proxima Centauri," Martinez's navigator reported. 62 vessels this time. "They're bringing more ships to each engagement," Martinez observed. Getting confident. That was exactly what Admiral Chen wanted. Confident enemies made mistakes. Confident enemies stopped looking for tricks. "All ships, prepare gravitational pulse weaponry," Martinez ordered. "Let's give them a show they'll never forget." The battle for Proxima Centauri began exactly like the previous engagements. Human ships fought bravely with their advanced weapons. The gravitational pulse cannons initially devastated the alien bioships, tearing apart their hulls with localized gravity distortions. Then, as always, the aliens adapted. Admiral Vexith watched the battle from his flagship, growing increasingly confident in his understanding of human capabilities. These creatures were remarkably creative, developing new weapons for each engagement, but creativity without adaptability was useless. Gravitational resistance developed, his science officer reported. Enemy weapons are losing effectiveness. Excellent. How long until complete immunity? 17 minutes, Fleet Commander. Vexith nodded. The humans would fight desperately for those 17 minutes, showcase whatever other tricks they had, and then die. It was becoming a predictable pattern. What he didn't know was that every battle was being recorded by hidden human sensors. Every adaptation, every biological change in the alien ships, every tactical decision was being analyzed by the best scientific minds Earth had to offer. Dr. Vasquez had discovered something crucial about the hegemony's adaptation process. Once their bioships evolved to counter a specific threat, they couldn't evolve back. Each adaptation was permanent, locking them into defensive configurations that might not be useful against different weapons. They're like a lock that keeps adding more tumblers, she had explained to Admiral Chen. Each new adaptation makes them more secure against known threats, but also more complex and specialized. The more they adapt, the more rigid they become. This was the foundation of humanity's real strategy. They weren't just teaching the aliens to counter specific weapons. They were teaching them to counter the wrong kinds of weapons entirely. While the aliens developed immunity to energy weapons, exotic matter manipulation, and advanced physics, humanity's real arsenal remained completely hidden. Bullets, explosives, chemical weapons, biological agents. Simple, primitive, effective tools that the aliens would never think to defend against. The battle for Proxima Centauri ended like all the others. Human ships fought bravely, their advanced weapons proved initially effective, then became useless as the aliens adapted. The colony fell, and the survivors retreated to fight another day. But in the secure bunker beneath Luna, Admiral Chen smiled grimly as she watched the tactical recordings. "How many different weapon types have they adapted to now?" she asked Dr. Vasquez. 47 confirmed adaptations. Plasma weapons, antimatter, gravitational manipulation, quantum disruptors, neural disruptors, temporal distortion fields, and 39 others. And how many of those weapons will be effective against them in a real battle? None, Vasquez said with satisfaction. Every adaptation they've developed is specifically designed to counter threats that won't exist in our final engagement. Chen nodded. The deception had worked perfectly. The aliens thought they understood human capabilities completely. They had developed elaborate defenses against weapons humanity would never use. "Signal Phase 3, she ordered. "It's time to let them think they've won." The final act of the deception was about to begin. Admiral Vexith would soon believe he had learned everything there was to know about human warfare. He would bring his entire fleet to Earth, confident in his ability to counter any weapon humanity could deploy. He would be absolutely right about the weapons he knew about, but there were many, many weapons he had never seen. Admiral Vexith gazed at the blue marble of Earth through the viewports of his flagship. After 8 months of conquest, he had finally reached the human homeworld. Their defense fleets were scattered, their colonies destroyed, their advanced weapons proven useless against hegemony adaptation. Victory would be swift and decisive. "All ships report ready for final assault," his tactical coordinator announced. "Full fleet deployment achieved," Vexith nodded with satisfaction. He had brought everything, 600 bioships, the largest force ever assembled for a single world conquest. Perhaps it was excessive, but these humans had shown remarkable creativity. Better to overwhelm them completely than risk any surprises. Human. Defensive positions? Standard formation around their homeworld. Approximately 200 vessels, mixed classes. Energy signatures match the weapons we've already encountered. Plasma cannons, antimatter beams, gravitational disruptors, Vexith mused. All completely useless against our current adaptations. Through months of battle, his ships had evolved perfect defenses against human weaponry. Their bio-armor could absorb any energy attack, deflect exotic matter, and resist gravitational manipulation. The humans had fought bravely, but they were simply outmatched by superior evolution. "Begin the assault," he commanded. The hegemony fleet moved toward Earth like a living tide. Each ship was a masterpiece of adaptive biology, its hull rippling with defensive organs evolved specifically to counter human weapons. They had learned from 57 separate engagements, absorbed the knowledge of every human innovation. Admiral Sarah Chen watched the enemy approach from the bridge of the UES Defender, Earth's flagship. Around her, the bridge crew maintained professional calm, but she could see the tension in their faces. Everything depended on the next few hours. Enemy fleet in range, her tactical officer reported. Signal all ships, Chen ordered. Begin conventional attack pattern. The human defense fleet opened fire with familiar weapons. Plasma cannons lanced out toward the approaching bioships. Antimatter beams carved through space. Gravitational pulse generators created localized distortions in space-time itself. Just as in every previous battle, the weapons were initially effective. Several hegemony vessels staggered under the assault, their bio-armor flaring as it absorbed the incoming energy. Then, exactly as expected, they adapted. Within minutes, the alien ships were completely immune to the human attack. Plasma beams were absorbed and converted to harmless light. Antimatter was neutralized by evolved defensive fields. Gravitational weapons had no effect on hulls that had learned to exist in twisted space-time. All conventional weapons ineffective, Chen's weapons officer reported, playing his role perfectly. The enemy has adapted complete immunity. Fall back to secondary positions, Chen ordered. Prepare for close engagement. But as the human fleet began its retreat, something unexpected happened. Hidden sensor arrays throughout the solar system suddenly went active, painting the hegemony fleet with targeting data. What are those energy signatures? Vexith demanded, as his ships detected the new sensor sweeps. Unknown configuration, Fleet Commander. The energy patterns don't match anything in our database. Impossible. We've encountered every human weapon system, but even as he spoke, new contacts began appearing on tactical displays. Ships were decloaking throughout the solar system, emerging from behind asteroids, rising from the shadows of planets, dropping out of stealth fields that had hidden them for months. Admiral Chen smiled grimly as her real fleet revealed itself. All ships, this is Admiral Chen. Execute Operation Primitive Thunder. The UES Spartacus, Chen's true flagship, led the emerging fleet. Behind it came hundreds of vessels that the hegemony had never seen, ships armed with weapons so primitive that no advanced civilization would consider them worth defending against. What are those weapon signatures? Vexith asked in growing confusion. They're unlike anything we've encountered. His science officer studied the readings with bewilderment. Fleet Commander, these appear to be chemical explosives and kinetic projectiles, simple ballistic weapons. That's impossible. No spacefaring civilization uses such primitive technology. But even as he spoke, the human ships opened fire. The UES Montana, a massive dreadnought, fired its main batteries. 12 enormous guns hurled shells filled with high explosive and steel fragments. The projectiles struck a hegemony cruiser that had evolved perfect defenses against energy weapons. The alien bioship had no defense against simple metal moving at high velocity. The shells punched through the evolved armor like it was paper. Explosions ripped through the vessel's interior as chemical charges detonated. The bioship, designed to absorb plasma and deflect exotic matter, had no ability to handle crude kinetic impact. Direct hit, the Montana's captain reported with savage satisfaction. Target destroyed! Across the battlefield, the pattern repeated. Human ships armed with railguns fired tungsten rods at tremendous velocity. Fighter craft strafed bioship hulls with armor-piercing bullets. Torpedo bombers delivered warheads packed with conventional explosives and ball bearings. The hegemony's perfect adaptations were useless. Their ships had evolved to counter the most advanced weapons in known space, but they had no defense against the oldest weapons in human history. This is impossible, Vexith roared as his flagship shuddered under the impact of simple gunfire. How can primitive projectiles penetrate our armor? Our bio-armor evolved to absorb energy and deflect exotic matter, his science officer reported in panic. It was never designed to stop solid projectiles. Then adapt. Evolve new defenses. We're trying, Fleet Commander, but the adaptation process takes time. These weapons are so primitive that our systems don't recognize them as threats. Admiral Chen watched the slaughter through the tactical displays of the Spartacus. Months of careful deception were paying off perfectly. The hegemony had developed elaborate defenses against weapons that humanity had deliberately shown them, while leaving themselves completely vulnerable to weapons so simple that no one would think to defend against them. Target their flagship, she ordered. Concentrated fire, all batteries. The Spartacus and 3 other dreadnoughts turned their guns toward Vexith's command ship. Hundreds of armor-piercing rounds slammed into the evolutionary apex, each one punching through bioarmor. That could have shrugged off a nuclear explosion. Vexith felt his ship dying around him. The organic corridors were bleeding. The neural networks were shorting out as simple metal fragments tore through systems that had evolved to handle the most sophisticated attacks imaginable. "Retreat," he commanded. "All ships, fall back to jump. Distance!" But it was too late for many of his vessels. The human fleet had emerged from concealment at point-blank range, catching the hegemony formation in a carefully planned ambush. Bioships that had conquered galaxies died under the assault of bullets and bombs. Dr. Elena Vasquez watched the battle from her laboratory aboard the Spartacus, monitoring the alien ship's desperate attempts to adapt. "They're trying to evolve kinetic defenses," she reported to Admiral Chen. "But it's happening too slowly. Their adaptation process wasn't designed for such primitive threats." "How long until they develop effective countermeasures?" "Hours, maybe days. But by then, most of their fleet will be destroyed." Chen nodded. This was always meant to be a decisive battle, not a prolonged campaign. Humanity had one chance to cripple the hegemony fleet before it could adapt to their real weapons. "Signal all ships," she ordered. "Press the attack. Don't give them time to evolve." The battle raged for 6 hours. When it ended, 3/4 of the hegemony fleet was destroyed or crippled. Admiral Vexth's flagship limped away from Earth with only 47 ships remaining from his original force of 600. But as he retreated, Vexth was already thinking ahead. His ships had recorded everything about these primitive human weapons. They would adapt. They would evolve. They would return stronger than before. What he didn't know was that Admiral Chen was counting on exactly that response. Because while the hegemony spent time adapting to bullets and bombs, humanity would be developing weapons they couldn't even imagine. The emergency council meeting on the hegemony homeworld of Zephyr Prime had been called in panic. For the first time in over 1,000 years, a hegemony fleet had been defeated. Not just defeated, slaughtered by primitive weapons that shouldn't have been able to harm their advanced bioships. High Admiral Kethvar studied the battle recordings from Earth with growing disbelief. "Show me the human weapon systems again." The holographic display replayed the devastating ambush. Hegemony vessels, perfectly adapted to counter-energy weapons and exotic physics, being torn apart by simple metal projectiles and chemical explosives. It was like watching battleships being sunk by stone axes. "How is this possible?" demanded Council Leader Vexthon. "Our ships evolved perfect defenses against their weapons." "They did," confirmed bioengineer Sil Andros. "Every adaptation was flawless. Our armor could absorb any energy beam, deflect exotic matter, resist gravitational manipulation. The humans taught us everything about their capabilities." "Everything except this," Kethvar said grimly, gesturing at the recordings of bullets punching through bioarmor. The truth was starting to dawn on the Council. The humans had deliberately lost dozens of battles, sacrificing ships and lives to create a false impression of their true capabilities. Every engagement had been theater, designed to teach the hegemony to defend against the wrong threats. "They planned this," Vexthon said slowly. "Every defeat, every retreat, every weapon. They showed us. It was all deception." "Impossible," protested Sil Andros. "No species sacrifices so much for mere tactical advantage." "Humans do," said a new voice. Admiral Vexth entered the council chamber, his bioarmor still scarred from the battle. Of his original command of 600 ships, only 47 had escaped Earth's gravity well. "The humans don't just fight to win," Vexith continued. "They fight to survive, and to survive, they'll sacrifice anything, including their own people, especially their own people." Vexith activated a display showing human casualties from the deception campaign. They lost over 30,000 personnel in staged battles, ships, crews, entire squadrons, all sacrificed to sell their lie. The council fell silent. The concept was alien to them. The hegemony conquered through superiority, not sacrifice. They absorbed the weak to become stronger, not to become something else entirely. "What do we do now?" Kethvar asked. "We adapt," Vexth said firmly. "Our ships are already evolving defenses against kinetic weapons. Within months, we'll be immune to their bullets and bombs." "And then?" "Then we return to Earth and finish what we started." But even as he spoke with confidence, Vexith felt a nagging uncertainty. The humans had fooled them once with superior strategy and willingness to sacrifice. What other surprises might they have prepared? Back on Earth, Admiral Chen stood in the rebuilt command center, watching similar recordings of the battle. But where the hegemony saw defeat and humiliation, she saw the beginning of a new kind of warfare. "Satellite intelligence confirms it," reported Colonel Harrison. The surviving hegemony ships are already showing biological changes. They're developing kinetic-resistant armor. How long until they're fully adapted? 6 months, maybe 8. When they return, bullets won't be effective. Good, Chen said, surprising her staff. Dr. Vasquez looked up from her research station. Admiral? Think about it, Chen explained. We've now forced them to develop defenses against energy weapons, exotic physics, and kinetic weapons. Each adaptation makes them more specialized, more rigid, more vulnerable to things they haven't adapted to, Vasquez said, understanding. Immediately, exactly. While they're busy making themselves bulletproof, we'll be developing weapons they can't even comprehend. Chen moved to the main tactical display, where Earth's new defensive preparations were taking shape. Hidden facilities across the solar system were working on projects that push the boundaries of human imagination. Project Pandora? She asked. Biological weapons tailored to attack their organic ships, Dr. Martinez reported. We've identified 17 viral agents that could compromise their bioarmor. When they return, we'll introduce pathogens into their hulls that will literally eat them from the inside. Project Prometheus? Chemical warfare on a molecular level, answered Dr. Kim. Nerve agents designed to disrupt their ships' nervous systems. Their vessels won't just be damaged, they'll be driven insane. Project Damocles? Quantum weaponry. That attacks the fundamental structure of matter, Dr. Zhang announced. Their adaptations work on a biological level. This bypasses biology entirely. Chen nodded with grim satisfaction. Each project represented a different approach to warfare, designed specifically to counter the hegemony's adaptive capabilities. What? About psychological warfare? She asked. Dr. Vasquez smiled darkly. That's the beauty of our strategy, Admiral. We've already won the psychological war. The hegemony built their entire civilization on the belief that adaptation equals superiority. We've proven that wrong. How so? Think about what just happened. They spent 1,000 years conquering galaxies through superior evolution. Then, a primitive species defeated them with rocks and sticks. Their whole worldview has been shattered. Chen could see the truth in that. The hegemony's greatest strength was also their greatest weakness. They believed their way was the only way. They thought evolution and adaptation were the ultimate weapons. Humanity had just taught them that innovation could defeat adaptation. Reports from our deep space sensors? Chen asked. Multiple hegemony fleets are converging on their homeworld, Intelligence Officer Park reported. They're mobilizing everything they have. This won't just be another conquest fleet. This will be a war fleet. Numbers. Conservative estimate? 3,000 ships, possibly more. The bridge fell silent. Even with their recent victory, humanity couldn't face odds like that with conventional tactics. Then we'll use unconventional tactics, Chen said calmly. How long until they reach Earth? 18 months, assuming they take time to fully adapt to kinetic weapons. Perfect. That gives us time to prepare surprises they'll never see coming. Chen turned to address her entire staff. Ladies and gentlemen, we've won the first round. The hegemony came here expecting an easy conquest and got a bloody nose instead. But they'll be back. And they'll be ready for everything they think we can do. Which is exactly what we want, Dr. Vasquez added. The hegemony thinks warfare is about adaptation, Chen continued. They evolve to counter threats. But humans don't adapt. We innovate. While they're busy becoming immune to our current weapons, we'll invent entirely new ones. And if they adapt to those? Colonel Harrison asked. Chen smiled with predatory satisfaction. Then we'll invent something else. The hegemony has spent a millennium perfecting the art of becoming invulnerable. We're about to teach them that invulnerability is just another problem to solve. Outside the command center, work was already beginning on projects that would have been impossible before the war. Weapons that attack time itself. Devices that could turn an enemy's strengths against them. Technologies that redefine the very concept of warfare. The hegemony would return, stronger and better adapted than before. They would bring overwhelming force and perfect defenses against every weapon humanity had used, and they would discover that humanity had barely begun to fight. Because the greatest human weapon wasn't any technology or tactic, it was the simple, stubborn refusal to accept that anything was impossible. The hegemony conquered through evolution. Humanity conquered through revolution. The war was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning. But for the first time in their 1,000-year history, the hegemony would be fighting an enemy that didn't just adapt to survive, they adapted to win. And winning, for humans, was just another word for what's next.